Okay, this session is Insights from the Insights community. I'd like to bring our panelists up. Come on up, you guys. We have people from Dell, Express Scripts, and also Cox Communications. They were the brave ones to join us. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, so I'm going to ask each of you guys to introduce yourselves. I'll just name, we have Steve Pilecki from Dell, we have Jackie Rare from Dell, Tanya Feinstein from Express Scripts, and Ben Tolchinsky from Cox Communications. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off first by asking each of you guys just to talk a little bit about your role and a sense of the types of research you do, and so people can get a better sense of what your role is at your company.
As Seema said, I work for Dell. Jackie and I are both on the design to value team, which means when I'm not actually executing market research, I'm working across organizations with customer advisory councils, with voice of field data from the sales organization, and other parts of the business to make sure that we're coordinated and in our efforts.
Fantastic. Jackie?
I'm Jackie Rare. I'm with Dell as well. I've been with Dell for quite a long time, since '93, and for the vast majority of that time I was on the consumer side. For the past almost 5 years, I'm on the B2B side, so I never thought B2B or ITDMs would be interesting, but actually they really are. But I'm a little nervous to hear some of the things that I've learned about finding them in samples, so would love to kind of share my thoughts. I primarily am focused on helping our product planners make sure that they're optimizing their entire portfolio of products, from, if you've heard of Precision Workstations, Latitude notebooks, so some pretty important decisions.
Hi everybody, I'm Tanya Feinstein. I recently joined Express Scripts to run their Net Promoter Score Voice of Customer program. So basically my job is to gather feedback from our member population and hopefully soon from outside of our member population to help drive some of the digital strategy and design that Express Scripts is doing now in our sort of transformation to more of a technology company.
And Ben Tolchinsky with Cox Communications in Atlanta, Georgia. We are a provider of cable, internet, telephone, home security services in about 10% of the United States. And I personally help to run the consumer insights as it relates to our video business, do a lot with our customer experience group, and touch some of the other products at times as needed.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get right into it. I just want to say I wish I could have taken a picture of both of you yesterday during the B2B session. They were completely surprised or shocked, but I'd love to get your initial reactions to some of the content you've seen. And Ben, as well, I know, Tanya, you weren't here.
I wasn't there, but I'm very interested.
Okay. Be great to hear some candid reaction.
So as I was introducing myself, I primarily was on the consumer side and focused purely on commercial for the past 5 years. And in the past 2 years, I am noticing things in my studies that have really concerned me. And at this point, I am not comfortable doing an online survey with online panel without some sort of a really high-touch interaction with that ITDM, whether that be a telephone interview or I'm actually having to travel around the world a lot more now. I don't want to have to travel that much. I want to try to find a way to be confident in ITDM sample again. I've had bot challenges with the sample. One of the key challenges, though, is that I've been the one finding it sometimes rather than our partners, but we're working through that and finding ways so that it's found for sure, but ideally found before I do. But what really concerned me the most is I get that there are bots. I hope that there's more machine learning, et cetera, that can help address those issues. But what concerned me the most in that presentation, although I'd love to talk more with EMI about how to address these challenges, are that people are coming into the panel saying they're ITDMs, and those are the ones that are getting funneled into my survey to take these surveys. And I am doing things in my surveys now, like saying, okay, this is a mobile workstation study. When are you buying a mobile workstation for a laptop? And getting some responses like, oh, well, when I need a moving cart. That's not what a mobile workstation is. So those people we can weed out. But what about the people who are coming in saying they're an ITDM because they know that a lot of surveys need to be done with ITDMs, but they're then going and Googling what is a mobile workstation, and they're getting in, and I'm keeping them in. So that's
the part that was scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so moreover, some of what was discussed was how respondents can maybe qualify for the screener, but there's two types of qualification, right? There's getting through the screener, and there's all the traditional methods, IP fingerprinting, straight lining, all those things.
Right.
But there's also the aspect of, are they giving thoughtful answers? So what Jackie and I have done, and it's not ideal, but it's what we have for now, is open-ended validation while you're in field. So maybe you ask them a question, and this isn't a web survey, mind you. Tell me about when you purchased your last laptop. Where did you go? What were your top two choices? How did you decide between them, to see how people are actually answering those questions? Because it's remarkable, things that will go through the screener, go through our market research providers. You'll see people copy and paste the text of the question into the text box. You'll see ASDF, and you automatically know that those respondents need to go. So I actually share a lot of Jackie's skepticism. I'm willing to bet, as the end customer of what you guys provide, that we're not the only ones that are skeptical about this.
Yep. No, and I think the important part is that you guys are here and part of the conversation. So I think partly it's been scary to share the reality of what we're dealing with, but part of SampleCon and these conversations kind of work collaboratively to figure it out, because I don't think there's a silver bullet. It is tweaks and refinements. Ben, before we move on to another topic, what were your initial reactions from yesterday?
I had a bunch of reactions.
Yes.
And I think that, it's interesting. I came from the vendor side, the full service supplier side, where I used to pay a good deal of attention to the things you all do. I joined every panel that I could, just so I could keep an eye on what's going on out there and how many invitations I was getting, and that informed me to some degree of what I perceive to be quality and such. So now the last 7-8 years, I've moved over to the corporate side, and I essentially pay no attention to the work you guys do. It is transparent to me. Maybe it's naive of me that I should be more paying attention. I work with trusted research suppliers, that I put my faith in them, that they are working with the right companies to do the best for us and what's in our interests. The other global observation that I have is, I sense that the folks in this, the folks in this room are facing challenging issues as we move forward. You guys are the link to the gasoline that runs the car for all of us, and when that precious resource dries up, all of us are in trouble. And so I wonder, how can the community of sample sources panel companies, market research suppliers, corporations, perhaps even consumers, how can we work together to ensure this resource is plentiful for the years to come? So that's my a global perspective, and I do think or wish that more folks like us. I realize this is to your benefit as a collection of companies that share ideas, but perhaps more of us, or even the market research suppliers, could be in the conversation so we can all work together. We all have different agendas, but perhaps we can all work together to maintain this precious resource.
Yeah, and I think I definitely see a shift, and tell me if you guys agree, that it's a collective problem. It's not, okay, you guys go fix it, we got other problems. It's, over the years, we're seeing more and more where we're saying, to your point, it's the gasoline for what we all do. And so there's challenges, and yes, we can definitely do the work to get it fixed, but we need to collaborate. We need collaboration across the value chain.
Right, if I could just add to that. So we would not want to be in the business of working directly with you and paying you directly to supply our sample. But if we can find panel providers that can instill in us a lot of confidence in their sample, can explain to us how they're innovating above and beyond just incentivization, I think we're in a position where we can work with our market research partners to say, if you want this work, you need to work with these guys over here. Because too often what we see is, and I don't know how every panel works, we'll work with a particular panel in general because we will get in the weeds on who are you using. And then if the incidence is not working out the way we'd originally planned, we find out, well, then they went and just kind of borrowed sample from one of their partners, and that's not really what we want.
No, it's just a lot about kind of trust and transparency, right? There's not, like, if I buy sample, I've had a lot of conversations. So I was on the supplier side, I worked in client side, and I sort of have to trust whatever the sample providers tell us. And like, we do all of this stuff. We read all the open-ended comments. We split people and look at their data to figure out, oh, does this kind of make sense in terms of the screening, in terms of what people have told us before. But when it comes down to it, like, we don't really know, right? It's random people on the internet. Like, we don't know who these people actually are. And when we try to, like, oh, okay, well, can we do something else to figure out, like, can we look at LinkedIn? Can we do something, especially with these specialized populations? The answer is always no. So it's just.
Okay, so I want to have the audience empathize with some of the challenges that you guys deal with as a result of data quality issues.
Well, and we know your lives aren't easy either.
Yeah,
right?
no, understood. But I think, it's also nice to share perspectives. And I know, Jackie, you had an example that you wanted to share of where things had gone awry or you had challenges. And what does your day or week look like? And what are the ramifications of that?
So I'll answer that, but I'll also adding on more to what we were just talking about. I am glad to hear that the sample community, the supplier community, is recognizing this as a challenge. Just to be honest, the feedback that I sometimes receive is, Jackie, you are so involved. Most of our clients are not that involved, looking at the data, et cetera, almost to the extent of, trust us, don't worry, you don't need to be that involved. But when I find the things that I do, I cannot be confident in that research and in the ultimate recommendations that I'm giving for these really important decisions. So I am trying new approaches, and the new approaches, for the most part, have been working, but I don't think that they are sustainable over time. So 2 approaches that I've taken. One, I just presented the results on Wednesday, was for our precision workstation line. It is harder to find ITDMs that are buying these products, but if they are an ITDM and they say they're buying these products, they should be the right audience. Because I'm not comfortable doing it completely online, what we did is a programmed quant structured survey, but we had professional interviewers that went through the survey with the ITDMs by phone. The interview took 40 minutes.
Wow.
I listened to a lot of them. The ITDMs were engaged. Because of the deep screening, we knew that they were who they said that they were. We had 2 choice designs in the study. I didn't think it'd be possible. We hardly lost anybody that tapped out. We're fortunate because if they're really the right ITDMs, they're interested in this because they're learning about this product category, and they feel like, and they are absolutely having an impact on the product decisions that we're making. We were only able to do, I was pleased with this, only able to do 200 interviews per country, so 600 total, where before for choice designs you would have loved to do 300 or 400. I'm completely fine. I would have been okay with 100 knowing that they were the right people than 300 not knowing that they were who they were. But when I presented that out, my planner, who was so skeptical of research, believes the data, it makes sense. And he said, I want the Excel file. I'm going to be looking at this for the next year. Go ahead, Tanya.
So I was a supplier for Jackie. So I know this planner. And we, I remember this very clearly. And one of the issues that I know suppliers run into is, okay, we want to be totally confident in our sample, let's do telephone interviewing. Like, we would write that into our proposals, but it's so expensive.
Right.
But if you want physicians, if you want these like super specialized people, that right now, that's sort of the only way you're going to be confident. Except if you're polling like the American Medical Association list or something. Like
And you've already made that decision. Like, for right now, you must do some sort of qual piece to gain the confidence in the data.
Well, it's not just, it's not us.
No,
right?
no, I'm just saying, like, on a
yes,
personal level.
No, but I mean, it's not us. Like,
Okay.
we are not, like, for suppliers, we are not the client, right? The client is the people that we report to.
Sure.
So for them to
Have the
really be confident to make decisions based on this data.
Got it. You're talking from your supplier role.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but even internally.
Internally?
Like, internally, like, I'm not, like I take, I'll take the data, but then the people who actually do stuff with it are not us. They're the people that we're doing this research for internally, our internal clients. And for them to be confident, they need to know more about like the nitty gritty. Yeah, we need to listen to the interviews. We actually need focus groups or interviews or whatever to back up what we're finding quantitatively.
Got it.
Yeah, if I can find a way to do it without doing a web survey, and I grew up in the quant world.
Right.
I made my bones on conjoint analysis. If I can find a way to do it without doing a web survey, that's very appealing to me.
That's ideal.
For all the reasons Jackie cited.
Sure.
I mean, you see sometimes in a sample where if 80% of your sample, if your CEO titles are 80% females to males, it'd be great if we'd made that much progress.
Right.
But you just sort of have a sense that that's not right. And we've had too many of those situations in the past to not give us pause.
If I could add to that, so yes, for me personally right now, I am uncomfortable doing a completely online survey that doesn't have some sort of high touch, whether that be by using professional interviewers and ending up with a small base size, or having to do qualitative and ending up with an even smaller base size. But what I will say is, I only have a certain amount of time, but I would love to collaborate with this community in helping us figure out what the right answer is. I know the teams on both the sample side and our partner side, and I call them partners because I really see them as part of my team. I know we all want the same end goal, so I am happy to collaborate. When I did have a partner for the first time say, okay, Jackie, here's what's really going on. I'm like, wow, why didn't you let me know? I said, let's have a all-day working session and invite some sample partners in and just try to figure out how to address that. I'm open to be a part of that solution.
That's fantastic. Ben, your experience in terms of data quality, has anything kind of bubbled up to the top and said, oh my gosh, Houston, we have a problem? Or has a supplier really managed to your expectations?
As far as data quality,
Yeah.
Fine. As
Yeah.
far as I know, when we do tracking work, things seem to track
Right.
well and logically. We talked. There was talk yesterday a lot about good versus bad data. I struggle with that notion. I don't unless I do something side by side, I don't know what good versus bad is. In the I trust my suppliers to work with the good panel partners, or the panel partners that they believe are best. But no, I don't. Everything looks good from my end. It's when something looks off, we can usually explain it. Probably the last source of investigation would be, is it something related to the panel? The only other thing I'll add is that I don't worry. I mean, like I said, it's what you guys do for me at least is pretty transparent and working fine. But I do wonder about panel growth and participation rates and are panels healthy? Are they growing? Are participation rates still? Are click-through rates still healthy? I mean, if and as it shrinks, what does that become? If only 5% are participating, what does that 5% represent? And then you got, of those 5 that click through, half of them term out of the interview. So what's the attitudinal or mental profile of those that actually get through? It's almost like his phone was going, general phone was going down. You wondered, who is that who is that person who's picking up the phone and doing the 30-minute phone interview? Maybe they fit the quota, but I always wonder who's doing it.
So you worry about the shrinking respondent pool, essentially,
I do.
or
I mean,
concern.
just at a high level,
Yeah.
is it growing? Are the numbers growing? And then are participation rates holding steady or declining? And as that declines, you start to wonder, well, who's participating?
Right. Who's left?
Non-response bias.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, we always wash that away. We always just ignore it away. But it starts to creep in as the
Yep.
participation rates can get lower, and incentives, and are we incenting them appropriately, et cetera. And then the other sort of global thing I wonder about is the influence and impact of DIY, more so outside our industry. I'm not a huge proponent inside our industry. Outside our industry scares the bejesus out of me.
What do you mean by that? Outside and inside?
Outside being what's the big company with an S? SurveyMonkey.
Yeah,
Thank you.
SurveyMonkey.
Joe Smith, who builds a survey on SurveyMonkey and puts it out there. It's not well done. It's a poor experience for the respondent.
They're going other places, basically. They're doing it on their own.
Yeah, but it just creates a poor experience. It creates a poor brand for our industry, and it's just it's not productive. It's not healthy. They're doing it. They're not trained. Not that we're trained to be doctors here, but they're not trained to design surveys, and that worries me.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys do research internally on your own on your customer database or kind of program surveys internally and field them on your own?
They do that in the customer experience part, where
Okay.
I was for about 5.5 years,
Okay.
part of MPS, what
Yep.
Tanya does now. But in our experience, we want to talk not just to our own customers, but to
The broad
people who are
population.
non-customers, because we'd be dumb not.
Right. Go ahead, Tanya. We continue to hear that end clients are now insourcing stuff. And they're saying, you know what, I'll get one of these programming platforms, I'll put a survey together, I'll buy sample direct, or obviously if you have your own customer database, you don't need to go to somebody for that. I'm just curious if you guys have seen that trend among your colleagues or even within your organizations.
Yeah, we definitely have. I mean, we're actually moving further towards that.
Okay.
We're trying to move away from some of the external firms. And part of that is just because we have so many, we cover 85 million people in the U.S. The U.S. population is sort of
Your base.
those are our customers.
Got it. Okay.
But when we want to go for pharmacists or doctors, that's a little bit more complicated. I'm new there, so I'm still getting into the weeds of it. But one of the reasons that we're trying to do more of the, at least kind of online data collection to try to understand what people's experience is with our digital products is because when we have that data, we can link, and Dell does this too, right? So we can link their satisfaction scores with their web traffic and figure and their calls, so we can figure out if somebody's mad, what happened to them.
You can see their path.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we know then what to go do.
I already know the answer, but
As far as DIY
Yes,
for us,
yeah.
I'm sorry. No, it would be high. It wouldn't be effective. We're not bringing DIY in. It would be very ineffective for us to do all our other roles to to do DIY in terms of design, program, buy direct,
Build,
et cetera.
right.
So we're still the full service model.
Okay. I have one, I think, pie in the sky question. And we've talked about quality. We know we want authentic respondents to take surveys. And, you know, you flip the model of kind of creating a really cool experience for the target populations that you guys are interested in. It costs money to build that community. You build trust with them. You get them to do a survey thoughtfully with some real strict guidelines so we don't burn that user experience. But the cost of that is much greater. How would you react to something like that? Is that more valuable, knowing that that is a authentic community that's there for a purpose outside of just earning rewards?
So in participating yesterday, I am starting to think of new ways of doing things, and perhaps building our own community is going to be a needed answer. That is very costly to do, although we do quite a bit of pretty extensive, costly research to begin with, but I just get concerned about the management of that panel, and also the education that those same people are getting by taking a latitude survey with us, a precision workstation with us. Are they getting too educated that they are then not a good representative audience? I don't know, but I am thinking about that. Some of our partners are looking into creating their panel where we could use it and other technology companies could use it. I'm open to that option too. I think that is one of the ways of addressing this challenge. There are challenges that come with that
too as well.
Yes.
Any thoughts from your perspective?
I actually built a panel back in the beginning of my career. This was back in probably the mid-2000s.
Okay.
Oil field professional. So I know exactly what goes into doing that.
Right.
So I would echo everything that Jackie said. At the same time, I think that I'm personally aware of the challenges of keeping those panels engaged, keeping them maintenance, keeping them involved. So for me, I think, yes, it's definitely a great idea. It's got to be cost effective, which I know is a tall order.
Right. And what is cost effective? I mean, you're currently paying something now that might not be yielding the quality, but if you have to do 2x and you're guaranteed quality, is that appealing?
So I won't speak.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I would say yes with a caveat.
Okay.
Right? So
Yes.
if it's twice the cost,
Yes.
I would not double the cost of my overall project. I would probably narrow the scope or narrow the sample.
Okay.
Or fewer studies. But the studies
Right.
that you do, you are confident in, are driving us in
results.
the right direction.
Okay.
I would rather, and I say this so many times, I would rather not do research than do research where we say that this is true and we are giving misinformation and we end up making the wrong decision. I think by triangulating with other data that we have access to, an internal perspective, we'd make a better decision than ending up with the wrong information.
Well, I think when we moved away from telephone surveys, it was our kind of internal customers just have the perception like, oh, like this is really cheap and easy and just like go collect some data.
Right.
And it's still expensive.
Right.
Right. And it's going to be expensive, but if it's expensive, we need to know as clients, we need to know why it's expensive, right? We need to know, okay, these are the verifications. This is how the panel was maintained. These are the job titles of these people. And maybe for sort of general consumer research, that matters less. But when you're talking about specialized audiences where it is super expensive to run a survey, that's worth paying for.
Let's talk about all these things that we continue to hear: big data, neuroscience, maybe less social, but social. How does that fit in? I'm going to ask Ben because it's a little bit more consumer-oriented. How does that fit into what you guys are doing from a research planning perspective? Are you bringing them into the fold and testing? What's the perspective there in terms of these new methodologies?
We are building our capability to marry the attitudinal and self-reported behaviors from survey data into other data streams. I can't really speak to how sophisticated we are from a managing all the data that flows into us. I know we've got a lot of people working on it, and we've got all these different data streams, and one of those data streams is soon to be customer feedback when we do studies using our customer sample, that we can make those linkages in terms of their reported behaviors and attitudes to other sources. But we haven't made a lot of headway in that space yet. It's complicated, and there's huge opportunity for us, but we have not made a lot of headway in that space.
So you guys are researchers by trade and profession, and we keep talking about big data and trying to make some sort of recommendation or understanding from that information. How hard do you think it is for you personally? Let's say you had to make the shift and say, I have online data, quant data, plus I have customer data, and you have user experience data, you have all this data. Do you feel like you can cross that chasm and say, yes, I can do that? Or what things would you require to be able to do, like pivot to cross the next change in our industry? It's a loaded question. I was just curious if you guys thought about it.
Well, so today, we can, to a certain extent, tie transactional data to customer feedback and things like that. But at the same time, it's not perfect. It'll get better and better as time goes on.
Right.
What I personally do is I try to, well, first of all, I always advise executives, I think it's mostly a matter of managing expectations, right? Never look at any one data point, never look at any one study or any single data point in a vacuum.
Right.
Because no matter how good that study is or how solid that sample is, they're all going to have some sort of bias, some sort of a weakness. So what I teach them is you need to look at multiple different sources of information and to see if directionally they're all pointing in the same direction. Because all market research really does is reduce uncertainty. And so what you're trying to convince executives of is, have I reduced uncertainty enough to the point where you feel comfortable making a decision? Is the risk lowered enough for you? But you're never going to get absolute certainty. There's an infinite cost to perfect information, but there's not infinite budget.
Fair enough. Tanya, you were shaking your head yes to that question, or?
Yes, I agree with Stephen. I mean, we're sort of going in that path now. I mean, that's where the world is going, right? I mean, what concerns me about just looking at sort of big data, right, is that we're just capturing the patterns that we have, right? We're just characterizing people's behavior and not really hearing from them directly. I mean, that's why I think there's always going to be a place for qualitative and quantitative research, especially when we're talking about sort of future-facing stuff, because if we just look at existing patterns, we get down a rabbit hole of imagination very quickly.
As I was talking to my colleagues before I came here, one of them theorized that that the world is moving to big data, behavioral data, and that the purpose of primary research will then supplement the big data. Whereas today, for my role, primarily it's primary research is our primary source, and when we can marry it with big data, or when we can marry it with other data sources, great. But perhaps one day, if the need or the ability to get primary feedback is diminished because of the efficiencies of big data, maybe that will come to pass sometime down the road.
So yesterday we had that Engaged MR. Is Andrew here still? From GRMB? Okay. There was a hypothesis yesterday that was presented that said, if you go to your CMO and say, the people that are taking our surveys don't feel good about our brand, right? They are associating these surveys with whatever your respective company brand is, and they're not having a good experience. And as a result, we need to now tailor the survey instrument to make it more appealing to consumers. What do you think the reaction would be internally? Would that help you manage your stakeholders and say, wait a second, you can't put everything in the survey because that in itself is a touch point with the consumer as it relates to your brand. Is that a winning argument in terms of questionnaire management?
I'm glad you brought that up because that's a big takeaway for me on what I can do to try to help solve this problem, is to make sure that my surveys are engaging, interesting, that the respondent, the ITDM, feels like they're going to get something out of this. So that's something that I've
You took
written
away,
down
yep.
and that I want to do a little bit differently. I'd love to have a shorter screener. But I need to feel confident in the sample going into the funnel to make sure that I can,
Right.
and that I know who's going to come out of it. So absolutely, we do a lot of surveys where they do not know that it's sponsored by Dell.
Okay.
But a lot of our qualitative, they end up knowing
Right.
because we need to show them products. And I'm making sure that I'm doing the right methodology to get the right results. But I think from a qualitative standpoint, the ITDMs really enjoy coming to our focus
Sure.
groups.
Yeah.
So
Were you going to add?
Oh, I was going to say, I actually, so primary research is a different animal. Obviously, we want to ask fewer, better questions no
Right.
matter what we do. To Jackie's point, we have screeners, we have to know that they're the right people. When it comes to customer experience, though, I actually pitched the case that if you were going to develop an online lead generation tool or a website, you wouldn't just throw it out there, you'd test it, right? So the pitch I made was, why don't we just have a conversation with our customers and ask them about the survey tool? Do you even care about these questions? These questions make sense to you? Or is there a different question we should ask you? That sort of a thing.
Right.
Get their feedback on the instrument as well, because what you want it to be from a customer experience point of view is you want it to be a conversation once or twice a year, not a survey.
Right, right. And how was that accepted internally?
Oh, they adopted
loved
some of
it?
it, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're moving to that also. So like I said, I just started Express Scripts. So one of the things I'm doing is just looking at all of our instruments, right? And right now we have a relationship, kind of customer experience, ongoing relationship survey. It's 30 pages long.
Right.
We run it monthly.
I have a question. Do you guys treat the surveys that you're going outside for sample differently to the surveys that you're sending to your customer database?
I definitely have
them
more
differently,
confidence in the ones that are coming from our own customer database.
But what about the user experience, or is it the same experience for both populations?
I think it's easier to design a survey for your internal customers because, first of all, it's not a blind study.
Right.
You're presenting yourself as a company that has a
Right.
relationship
So you probably care
with
more,
you.
right? I mean, it's
Right.
identifiable.
And you don't have to screen them. Like, you
Right.
know more about them
Right.
going in. So the surveys tend to be shorter and more focused.
Okay.
I have done internal surveys with our customers, SAT studies in the past. I'm not right now, but what I will say is I try my best to make sure that every survey we do, even though they don't know it's sponsored by Dell, even though we're talking to Dell customers and our competitive customers, that we're respecting their time. We're respecting who they are, and we're trying to put something in front of them that's interesting.
Valuable and interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
I trust our data that's sourced from panels every bit as much as data sourced from customer interviews. I have no reason not to trust it. We accept and understand that there's some bias in our branded surveys and our branded customer surveys, and we manage that appropriately. But this community has given me no reason to be concerned about the data. Again, I'm more of a, we touch 10% of the country. It's more of a general consumer, of course, but I've been given no reason to be concerned yet.
How are we doing on time? Does anybody know? Okay. 2 minutes? Okay. I want to leave with, I want to ask a final question, and that is, we talked about the quality piece. We talked about, trying to fix certain areas in terms of engagement. Did we miss anything in terms of how we can help you guys do better in your jobs?
Well, I guess I would answer it this way, and this is just a Band-Aid, really, but
Sure.
the better experiences I've had are where our market research providers work very strongly, for lack of a better word, with their panel providers to provide them feedback to say, these respondents they're not right. They got through the screener, but here's this other stuff we looked at, and they clearly don't belong here. I'm not talking about the ones that are marginal or arguable, but the ones that are clearly do not belong in this study. And some of our partners have developed relationships to the point where they don't have to pay for those respondents that are
Don't.
clearly
Right.
not the right people. So I can tell you from my perspective, at least in the interim, I don't mind going through that process. It's a little bit more work. I don't mind if the scrub rate is higher as long as it doesn't impact our cost and it doesn't impact our time in field too much. Because what we care most about is the quality of the sample. And we know that you guys have challenges too.
Two things for me. Figure out a way to make sure that somebody who's coming in and y'all have on your panel saying is an ITDM is an ITDM.
Okay.
Second thing, greater transparency and greater knowledge. I want to know, so therefore my partner supplier needs to know much more detail about how these panels are recruited and how they are incented. I've asked the question of how they are incented. I've never gotten a straightforward answer. That's a big deal. If they are getting incented a really low amount, they're not an ITDM. An ITDM is not
gonna waste their
going to
time
spend
doing
their
that.
time taking the survey for whatever, 40 cents, $3, $30. We need to do something differently. I know how much we're having to pay them for focus
Right.
groups, so I know they're not going to participate for that amount. So those are the two things for
Great.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo as much transparency as possible. Like, they just trust us, we're taking care of it. That's not an okay response.
Okay.
And I think the only thing I can say to this community, what would help me as going forward is, again, I just look at it from the big picture perspective that the folks all walking around are our gold, are our oil, you know, and when that runs dry, you know, they pay a lot of our salaries, and you know, it needs, and we all have different objectives. The corporate community has our certain goals. The supplier community has goals, and you guys have your goals, and they tend to conflict with each other. And you know, it's in my best interest, it's in Cox's best interest that consumer feedback stays healthy. So how can we be a part of the solution? I don't know the answer though.
Thank you. Do we have time for questions? 2 questions? Anybody have questions?
Don't be afraid.
No? Okay.
Hi. As the world invariably moves towards new uses of user attention and time, mobile fragmentation, even online-based sort of less time span available to do things like take longer surveys. Obviously, it's on the sample community to change things. What are you guys looking forward to? What are you guys trying to innovate and change on the methodology and questionnaire side that you approve to make use of less user engagement per session, mobile-friendlier formats, newer technologies that might make use of other uses of questionnaire, like maybe a different way to use matrices and that type of stuff?
I don't know why that's on the panel. I don't know why you say it's on us. I don't think it's
not. It's on all of us. I'm just
well,
asking
no, but I don't
understand.
see it as it's on the panel community to create the create those solutions. I mean, it's whose job is it to lead? And I, you know, is it working with us to, you know, over my career now, I do see that the mindset is starting to flow into us finally, that we need our surveys need to be shorter. We need to design with a mobile-first mentality. You know, and I don't know which way it flows. Does it flow top down or bottom up? But I don't think it's the panel community's responsibility to create and define. Maybe some of it is, and come to, you know, work your way up the ladder and convince us that this works in today's age.
So one of the things that we're trying to do is get much more focused in when we ask questions. So just try to get more kind of context and intercept people from our members, not really from external population, but intercept to them more when they're in the weeds of an experience and then ask them much more focused questions. Like, we still have this like kind of ongoing brand reputation survey, but I anticipate we're going to move away from that and have much more in context touch points.
That was another takeaway that I had as part of helping to make the experience more engaging. I don't know what the answer is. When our planners come to us, they do have a pretty tight window of, we know enough about technology now, so we know what we need to test in the survey, but we need to make a decision in 12 weeks. So I don't have an opportunity to do 3 different smaller surveys, or I don't think I've had in the past. I want to think about it differently as well, because that is a challenge. It's hard to, on an ongoing basis, keep an ITDM on the phone for 40 minutes. So that's another takeaway that I have to think through it. I think all 3 of us, the sample partners, our research suppliers, and the clients need to try to figure that out.
And I know there are, there's people doing innovative work in that space who are doing the 1 question and 2 question and then predicting who I am and tying my responses to, so they can predict how, so they can tie it all together. Maybe that's the way it's going. I'm skeptical at this point, but maybe over time I will become less skeptical, and that's the way it, and I'll have to adapt as such.
Thank you.
So I'd just add to that.
Sure.
So I worked on the supplier side for a long time, and I know how difficult it is to be on the outside looking, and you don't have a lot of leverage over your customer because they're your customer. Jackie and I are lucky enough to work at a company where a good chunk of our jobs is, as market research experts, to take what our internal stakeholders need to learn and scope that appropriately. So for example, we'll spend a lot of time up front really focusing on what are the product decisions or the business decisions you're trying to make. And then if you've got 9 research objectives, and I've seen stakeholders come to me with 9, 11, the first answer, that's too much. We need to get this down to like 3 or 4 objectives, crisp, easy to understand. And usually if you can do that work up front, that goes a long ways towards actually shortening the survey.
Thank you. I think we're out of time. Let's give a round of applause to our panel. Thanks for taking the time. And Jax is back up here.
Go away. So we're going to get ready to have our networking break. We've got 15 minutes. Get some coffee, get some snacks. A couple of quick notes. I don't know if you all realize, but the people sitting out at our registration desk are from an organization called ARB. And they are the ones that help us organize and coordinate this whole event in conjunction with Rachel. So if you have an opportunity in an effort to reach out and be kind, just stop by and say thanks. It goes a long way. They do a ton of work, and they make sure we're taken care of. And also to our AV team, who has kept everything running smoothly. They have been meticulous in shutting off my microphone at the right time, because if you hear what I say up here, you can imagine what might be caught by accident. And they even helped me when I dropped it in the toilet. So yeah, that happened. So have a good break. Please turn in your predictions. I was writing my predictions and I got super excited, so I decided I'm in on matching the $2,500. So we now have $5 grand on this, guys. 24 months. I want to see your predictions. You don't get to go home and research or whatever. Just write it down. You seem awfully opinionated when you're talking to yourselves. So put it on the paper, hand it in to me. Nicole over here is going to collect them, and we will put them in a safe space. I put my Twitter handle on mine just in case I get fired between now and then. Could happen. You might need to find me. Okay, thanks.